Hello and welcome to Trade Plates TV. Today I'm joined by Langley Steinert, CEO and founder of CarGurus. He's going to be answering some of your questions. Unfortunately, we're not doing this live today, but thank you to everyone who got in touch with questions about CarGurus and what Langley's history is. We're going to be going over all of those later in the show. But I thought I'd start with, why did you decide to move into the motor trade? What was it about setting up CarGurus that you thought was a good idea?
Sure. So in my prior life, I co-founded TripAdvisor, and after we sold the company in 2006, I had a big fat non-competition agreement that disallowed me from going back into online travel. So I was looking for kind of new categories to go explore, and I looked at automotive and real estate in the United States. And I wanted to try to find other categories that had similar characteristics to the online travel space, namely a place where a consumer would be doing a lot of research on a high purchase, expensive product like a car or a house. And in the real estate market, there was a company in the US called Zillow, which had started, which I don't know if people in the UK know much about, but it's a pretty big company now, publicly traded company. So I didn't want to go tangle with them. In the automotive space, at least in the United States, there seemed to be quite a void in terms of shopping platforms that provided, at least in my opinion, transparency, providing consumers with information around how much a car is worth or what the dealer's reputation is. And so we thought there was a real opportunity to provide this level of transparency to consumers in the United States around automotive shopping. Obviously, in my prior life at TripAdvisor, we kind of prided ourselves in providing transparency around hotel quality with hotel reviews. And that seemed to have worked pretty well. So we launched the company in 2006, so we've been in the business about 9 years now, and now CarGurus is we have about 21 million unique visitors a month, and we're, depending on how you measure traffic, but we typically look at kind of average daily shoppers. We have more average daily shoppers than any other platform in the United States, so we're...
Just for car retailing, is that all?
For automotive shopping, yeah. So we're the largest online automotive shopping site in the United States now.
And what's your reception been like in the US?
Very good. Yeah, as I said, we have about 21 million unique visitors a month using the site. We have 16,000 paying dealers that work with us in terms of putting their inventory, their stock, I should say, in the UK, putting their stock on our platform. And they've been really excited about both the volume of leads we can send them, as well as the close rate, the percentage of leads that turn into sold cars. We're helping our dealer partners sell quite a bit of cars. So. Obviously, we decided to expand this platform. We're now live in Canada, the UK, and we're looking at other European markets as well.
Right.
We've
so
been live.
Been set up here since December?
Yeah, we've been live in the UK since December.
How's that been compared to the US?
We're probably trending ahead of where we were in the US when we first started.
Wow.
We have a little over 1 million unique visitors a month now, from basically zero in December. And we do already have paying dealers on the platform. I believe we have about 200,000 to 300,000 units of stock on the platform now for consumers to use. And our traffic is growing leaps and bounds, so it's really exciting.
Why the UK?
Big market. Well, two reasons. Number one, it's a big market, and we felt that it had a lot of the same characteristics that we saw in the U.S. when we first started, in terms of there not being a platform that provided this level of transparency for consumers. With all due respect to AutoTrader here in the UK, great company. They're obviously doing quite well, but we thought that if you look at AutoTrader or Motors.co.uk, they don't have this transparency around whether a car is a good deal or a fair deal. They don't have dealer reviews. They don't have days on market, number of price drops. These are all the elements that we provide to consumers that, frankly, consumers, at least from what we've seen, are really enjoying having in terms of providing that level of transparency to the consumer when they're doing their automotive shopping.
Why do you think cars and houses are so far behind? Because you seem to be able to compare everything online now.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. But we're happy that it hasn't come to be yet, and that we're the ones bringing it. So we believe we're well equipped to provide that to consumers.
How did you know that you were onto a good idea when you first came up with TripAdvisor and CarGurus?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with TripAdvisor, both in the case of TripAdvisor and CarGurus, we started with, frankly, a business model that was the wrong business model.
Right.
About a year or two into the start of both companies, TripAdvisor, we had this crazy idea of having this search engine that would help people find information. Didn't have any concept of user reviews, and it wasn't even a consumer site. We were actually selling it to people like Expedia so they could put it on their site. It was more a B2B play.
Oh, okay.
And we quickly learned that that was like a horrible idea. And so we had to actually change the whole direction of the company to be more focused on consumers. And then that's when the whole thing took off. Same thing with CarGurus. We actually in the United States started with just doing more focused on editorial content, so providing user reviews and editorial reviews of cars. And frankly, that didn't really work. And so actually about a year and a half into the start of the company, we had to kind of relaunch the whole product to focus more on shopping and providing this price transparency for consumers, and it's worked out really well.
Did you try anything else in between that just didn't work at all?
No, those were the two. Well, the first iteration didn't work, but the second iteration has done quite well. Yeah.
So if you had any piece of advice for someone that was launching a new business, what would you say?
Wow.
Is there a major mistake?
Web?
Yeah, anywhere, I guess.
Oh. I mean, I have a whole litany of pieces of advice to people around starting companies. Most of one is be flexible with your business plan, because as I just mentioned, oftentimes your first iteration doesn't always work. My second other piece of advice, which we did both in the case of TripAdvisor and CarGurus, is keep your costs really low, keep your burn rate really low, because chances are you're going to mess something up in the beginning. So it's best to be able to have enough cash in the bank to be able to iterate on something new.
Yeah. So I've got to move on to some of the questions that are a little bit more detailed that dealers have been sending over. The first one is, how do you guys determine whether a car is a good or bad buy?
Well, we could spend hours on that, and depending how much mathematical specificity you want to get into. But,
we have a TV if you want to put a presentation up.
So I'll talk a little about what we do in the United States, or have been doing for 9 years now, and how it's evolved into the UK. So for every car that we upload onto our platform in the US, we upload about 5 million cars a night, and every single car gets analyzed at the make, model, trim, options, geographic market, vehicle condition level, so that we can look at all the cars that we've seen over the last, and it depends on the car. If it's a really popular car, we probably only have to look back like 90 days. If it's a rare car, oftentimes we have to look back like 12 months. We look at all the cars that are of a similar mileage, make, model, trim, option, and geographic market. And we do, I don't know if everyone wants to remember their math classes from either high school or college, but we do a linear regression model to look at all the cars that are similar, and we do a regression line, and then we calculate how many standard deviations away from the regression line.
See my face is like...
But anyways, in layman's terms, we look at all cars we've seen over the last 90 to 12 months that are similar to that, and we've looked at where those cars have been listed. And if the car is priced above where all cars similar to it have been priced, then we'll typically characterize that as an overpriced deal. If the car is below what we've seen for similar cars, we'll kind of characterize it as a good or great deal. I think the important implication for dealers, and oftentimes when we first came out with this in the United States, there was some confusion, concern might be another word, and typically how we talk to our dealer partners is to say, listen, if you have the white Ford Focus in your area that has the color white, it's got a tan interior, it's got alloy wheels, chances are you're the only one that has that car that consumer is looking for in your 40-kilometer radius. So chances are, in our opinion, you don't need to get into a price war with someone down the road, because chances are they don't even have that car. So the only advice we give dealers is, listen, you don't need to get into a price war, but what you do need to do is look carefully at your marketplace and make sure that you're not the highest cost provider and the lowest cost provider. What we do tell people is you should price your cars so that they're fair. Because when we do our math models, we model the cars on a normally distributed curve. Remember you remember your math classes again. And the two places where we tell dealers you don't want to be. You don't want to be at the low end of the market or the high end of the market. You want to be kind of right in the middle. So again, the only advice I give dealers is to say, listen, don't try to be the lowest cost provider. Don't be the highest cost provider either. What you ought to be doing is using tools that are out in the marketplace. In the United States, there are all sorts of vehicle pricing tools. They'll help you calculate how you make sure your car is a fairly priced deal. So it's really, in our opinion, about pricing your cars fair and not necessarily low or high. So that's the only advice I give people that necessarily want to listen.
So the good and great buys, are they based purely on price, or does it come down to trim level and things like that as well?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, when we do the price analysis, we look at the make, Ford, Toyota, the model, the trim, the options on the car, how many miles is on the car, what geographic markets, and because we do local market analysis, we don't just do obviously a market for the whole UK.
Right.
And then we also do a vehicle condition lookup to see whether the car's been in an accident or not.
I think because this is a concern, I guess I keep hearing, is that it's like a race to the bottom and it's just based on how cheap your car is, but I'm not hearing that.
As I mentioned earlier, I don't think it's well, I know it's not a race to the bottom because we've lived this for the last 9 years in the United States. The only thing I think it's a race to is it's a race to the mean, if you use a mathematical analogy. So again, if we price cars on a normally distributed curve, the two outliers are low price, high price. So what it is actually it's a race to making sure the cars are all priced fairly, not necessarily to make sure that the cars are the lowest cost providers in the space.
What impact does it have having good buy, great buy, or even fair buy?
Again, my advice to dealers, especially in the United States that we've dealt with so far, and I think it would be the same advice here in the UK, is I would honestly urge people not to price their cars as great deals. You don't even have to price your cars. So typically we characterize cars as either priced great, good, fair, high, or overpriced. So my only advice to people is, you don't need to be the great deal. You probably don't even need to be the good deal. What I would say is you probably ought to think about making sure your car is a fairly priced car, and then let the chips fall where they may. Because as I said earlier, chances are you have the low mileage Ford Fiesta or Ford Focus they're looking for that has a white exterior, tan interior, the alloy wheels. You probably have the unique piece of inventory someone's looking for, so you don't need to compete with really anyone in your local market. What I do think you need to do is make sure your cars aren't overpriced. So again, it's not a race to the bottom. It's not about being the lowest cost provider. And I would strongly urge people not to price their cars as great or good deals, but probably to use pricing tools like we provide and other companies do to figure out how do I price my car fairly in the marketplace.
What impact does that have on customer perception when they see that a car is fair, good, or great?
Well, in our ranking algorithm, how we rank the cars, and it's probably worth talking about for 2 seconds. So on our platform versus some of our competitors, whose name I won't mention, we rank the cars based on a number of factors. The two most important factors being how is the car priced in the marketplace? Is it overpriced? Is it a great deal? Is it a fair deal? And obviously, the cars that are priced the lowest to the market are priced the highest. However, there's an enormous ranking factor for the dealer's reputation. Because when we first came out with this platform in the United States, we noticed there were some dealers who were trying to play games. And the car would be priced really low, like it would be a great deal. But when the consumer got there, they would say, oh, it includes $5,000 down, or that's only available for military veterans. And so we had to figure out how do we police this, because that's not fair to all the other dealers who aren't playing those games. And so what we did is, and I took a little page out of my life at TripAdvisor, we said, well, wait a minute, why don't we have all the consumers rank the dealers after they've interacted with the dealer to tell us, did you, on a scale of 1 to 5, did you have a good experience or not? So in the United States, we now get about 880 dealer reviews a day. And we bake that into our ranking algorithm. So when we rank cars on our platform, it's not just a factor of whether the car is a great deal, but that's multiplied by a factor of whether the dealer has a good reputation. So it's the quotient of those two numbers. So it's not just sufficient to have a great deal. If you have really bad reviews, your inventory is going to end up on page 5 on our search results, and you'll get no exposure. If you have, let's say you have fairly priced cars, but you have a really good deal, you have a really good reputation, consumers really enjoy working with you, you have a great service department, you treat your consumers with respect, your inventory will end up at the top. So it's not just about price, it's about price and service. those two factors kind of married together.
Do you think it's fair asking people to review dealers, like, if they haven't even bought a car, if they've just made a phone call?
So what we do is we ask dealers to rate dealers. We ask the consumers to rate the dealers 2 weeks after they've interacted with the dealer.
Oh, okay.
So it's not kind of immediately. We wait a little while till after they've interacted with the dealer. So the chances some cases they may not buy the car. They may have just gone to look at the car. But we do think it's really important to bake into that concept of the dealer's reputation. And as I mentioned earlier, we do it in the United States, and I believe we're about to roll it out in the UK as well. Is we do a vehicle condition lookup as well. So it's really about the car's condition, because there are some dealers out there who really do a good job of reconditioning their cars, and they will take pride in that. And we think that's important to build into the mathematical algorithms. So we do take into consideration the car's condition as well.
How do you tell that?
So there are databases we can look up to see whether a car's been in an accident, whether it's been had flood damage, but it's been part of a rental fleet, and those are factors we do take into consideration.
But what if it's been like really well fixed up since the dealer's had it?
So you're talking about reconditioning.
Yeah.
That's certainly a factor. So at least in the United States, and I believe we're looking at it here in the UK as well, there's such a thing as kind of certified pre-owned cars. If they've gone through a certain rigorous manufacturer authorized reconditioning process, we will give the cars a boost for that. So
just back to the reviews. Does anyone check them, or
yes,
is it?
Yep.
Okay.
So much like my last life at TripAdvisor.
Is it you personally?
Do I know? I don't personally read the reviews now. We have an editorial staff, and they read every single review that goes on the site. And we do reject a whole bunch of them because there are means that I can't really get into now. There are ways that we can detect fraud if we can tell that it's a dealer down the road is trying to submit negative reviews about their competitor. We'll reject that. And the dealers do all have the ability to contest a review. They can contact us and say, "Listen, I think that's a bogus review, and we'll look into it. And if we find out that it was false, we'll remove it."
Okay. So what would you say is the biggest benefit to dealers being on CarGurus?
So twofold, and most of this is from our experience in the United States, but I think it's unfolding here in the UK as well. There's two things that dealers care about. One is scale. Can you deliver a significant amount of lead volume to my store or not? Because if you're like number 5 in their lead flow, if you're not a big player, they're not going to care. They don't have time to deal with that. So you need to provide scale. And the other one is close rate. Close rate being defined as what percentage of the leads that we send to a dealer turn into sold cars. So again, the early returns in the UK seem to be mimicking our experience in the US, which is that we drive an enormous amount of volume to dealers. At least in the United States, we're typically their number 1 lead provider in terms of the volume of leads we can send to the dealer. And our close rate is typically around 10%. So 10% of the leads we send to our dealer partners turn into sold cars. And as we've been told, that's typically the highest close rate they've seen of any partner. And there's a reason for this. This is why, to some degree, I think we're, at least today, unique both in the US and the UK. When a consumer comes off our platform looking at a car and they go to a dealership, there's something really unique that's going on. Number one, the consumer is going to that dealership with the third-party validation by us that this is a fair, good, or great deal. Like they already feel comfortable about the fact that this car has been validated by a third party, CarGurus, as being a fair, good, great deal. So they're more apt to buy that car versus if they come off a competitor's site where there's absolutely no concept of price validation or the dealer's reputation. They're kind of going in, frankly, blind. So again, our experience in the US and the early returns in the UK have been similar, that we drive an enormous amount of lead flow to the dealers, and the leads that do come across close at a much higher rate than our competitors because they've got that third-party validation built in.
Another question we had was, is there a way that dealers can follow up with customers that maybe got in contact and then didn't follow up on anything? Is there a way that dealers can then call them back and say, yes, they're interested?
So there's 2 ways that a dealer can be involved on our platform. We have a free service where they can upload their inventory to our site and they can get free leads.
Right.
The only limitation to that free program is the leads that you get are going to be anonymized. They'll come across as saying, Elstein369 at CarGurus is interested in your car. So you won't get the consumer's email address, you won't get their phone number. You only get those if you're a paying dealer.
Oh,
But to
okay.
be clear, this is free.
Yeah.
You're not paying any money for it. And you are getting an anonymous, it's almost like Craigslist. You'll get a way to converse with the consumer via our servers. You do have to kind of converse through our servers. And I think it's limited to 30 days. And I think you have 5 interactions. So you can communicate with the consumer.
Okay.
If you're on our paid platform, you get the consumer's email address, you get their phone number, you get your URL and your dealership address, and I think there's a map and directions application as well. So you do get more means of communication, but on our free platform, you can still communicate with the consumer, albeit through this anonymized email.
Okay. We sort of touched on this before, but a question we had was with the car supermarkets, they often put an admin fee onto their cars.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take that into account with the pricing?
We don't. I mean, the way we deal with that is that we ask our consumers to kind of rate the dealers, because if our consumers go to a dealership and they find that there's these hidden fees, they're gonna rate that in the user reviews, and that's kind of the best way for us to police that, because there's no way that we can go around and kind of validate everyone's pricing. We have to kind of take at face value what they upload into our in the feeds. So.
Do you think that CarGurus are going to change the way people sell cars? Are there going to be others that follow? And did you find that in the US? Any copycats or?
No, not yet. No, we haven't
really?
seen anyone come up with the same platform we have. The only thing that I think it's changed in the United States is that I think dealers are probably more cognizant about how they price their cars. And again, this goes back to this issue you raised earlier of, well, this is just... Because when we first came out on the marketplace in the United States, there was a huge outcry of like, this is awful, this is a race to the bottom, this is about price compression, this is going to ruin my business. And that never came to be. The only thing that I think did come to light is there are a number of tools in the United States, one called vAuto, one called First Look. We have a tool that we give our dealers as well that allows dealers to upload any piece of inventory, and then you can look at how you can price your car and get a sense of how it lays up against the competition. I think there's been a lot more awareness in the US, and I think probably there will be more awareness in the UK about how to price your cars. And again, not about pricing it to be the lowest priced car in the marketplace or the highest, but to kind of price your car so that it's priced fairly to the marketplace. So I think there will be more dealer awareness around pricing your cars fairly. So yeah.
Do you think you guys are going to be number one here?
That's the goal. And to anyone who has any skepticism, I would probably give two pieces of data. Number one, when I first started this little company called TripAdvisor, there was this guy, myself and Steve Coffer and about 4 developers, and it was like 6 of us above a sub shop.
Right.
And now it's a $12 billion publicly traded company. I think it's the biggest travel site in the world. So we seem to have done it then. In the US, when we started CarGurus, similarly, it was myself and like 4 or 5 developers, and no one had ever heard of us. And now, as I said, we're the #1 player in the United States. So there's 2 pieces of data points that say that we've done it before. So I think I'm fairly confident hopefully we'll do well here in the UK as well.
Are you on the right track, do you think, or is there anything you need to do to succeed in the UK?
Well, the early returns, as I mentioned, have been really encouraging in terms of the most important thing we look at is user traffic. So the more users we're getting to our platform, I think the more benefit we can bring to dealers, because we can turn those consumers over to dealers to buy cars. And again, we've only been in the marketplace since December, and our traffic has essentially gone from 0 to 1 million unique visitors. So I think that's pretty good in the space of 6 or 7 months. So yeah, the early returns are quite encouraging.
Yeah, because the thing I hear again and again from dealers is you've got to be where the customers are, and that's what it comes down to.
And some of the dealers we're already working with, so as I mentioned, we do have paying deals already. They're telling us that the lead flow we're sending to them is getting upwards to the same level as Auto Trader already. So we seem to be sending a lot of customers to our dealer partners.
Is that generally the reception you're getting, fairly positive?
Yeah, very positive. Yeah.
So, are there any other companies that you're worried about, or? I mean, because we've got things like CarWow doing something actually kind of similar to you guys but different.
So in the UK, I'm not all that aware of other companies doing a whole lot what we do. There are a couple of different business models in the US that we've kept an eye on that I don't think are necessarily competitive to us. I think they're actually probably more competitive to dealers. There's this new, one called Vroom, one called Beepy, where this concept of you can essentially buy your car online and it'll get delivered to your house. So they're trying to basically essentially eliminate the whole concept of a dealer, which I personally think is a huge mistake.
That was going to be my next question.
Tesla is coming out with a similar concept of, gee, you can just configure the car online and you don't necessarily need to go to a dealer. I personally think that's a huge mistake because we talked about it earlier before we hopped online here that two things. Number one, that when a car breaks down, you got to take it somewhere, and you need a dealer to service a car. So I think it's a little short-sighted to think that you can just eliminate dealers because then who's going to service the car? The other thing that you mentioned is that I think a car is an emotional purchase, and I think people, it's not unlike a house. I personally think you need to touch it, feel it, test drive it before you're going to make what is oftentimes a really large
I think
purchase.
that though, but I think a lot of people are quite happy to, this is the colour, what the spec I want, let's just go. Because you were saying in the US people can just turn up and buy a new car. Yeah,
new cars you can just...
which amazes me that you could just turn up and leave
turn up
with
and buy it. You don't have to order it. I mean,
Yeah.
you can order if you want to get some special features on the car, but for the most part, you can, for a new car, new and used, you just show up and buy it. But to get back to this issue of some of these new business models, I think cars, much like real estate, are an emotional purchase. It's a big ticket item. I don't think people are, for the most part, there may be some subsegment of the world that's happy to just spend a large sum of money without after having touched the car. But the analogy I would give is, would you go buy a house without ever having
I don't think it's
walked into
sensible.
it? You could. I'm not sure I would do that.
No,
but, especially if it's used. I would probably want to get the car inspected and make sure it's in decent condition, make sure the dealer has a good reputation. Are they going to stand behind this car? Because there are many aspects to a purchase. It's not just about price. It's about service. It's about reputation. So there are many elements to a car purchase, and I think dealers have an important role to play in that for the foreseeable future.
So are you going to be able to tell customers about things like after sales and other stuff that dealers do on CarGurus to give them, a more informed decision about why they should choose that dealer, or does that all come under the reviews?
Well, I think the reviews kind of take that into account. And as I said, the dealer reviews are a huge ranking factor in how we sort the inventory on our platform.
If you were to tell dealers like the one big reason why they should be on CarGurus, what would it be?
Because they'll sell a lot of cars with us.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's all about. I mean, the end of it all, if we either help dealers sell cars or we don't. And I know in the United States, as I said, we have 16,000 paying dealers who are really, really happy with our platform and our ability to help them sell cars. So, and the early returns in the UK have been similar in terms of our ability to send a lot of customers to the dealership store, and a large percentage of those customers turning into car purchasers. So in the end of it all, we either help them sell cars or we don't.
So the UK is obviously a fairly small market compared to the US. What's numbers?
I mean, relatively yes, but the UK is obviously a big market. So
what numbers are you hoping to hit in the UK? What will be the number when you feel you've succeeded?
When we're bigger than Auto Trader.
Yeah. Oh, really? How long do you think that'll take?
I'm just kidding. I think a couple of years. That's kind of. I mean, we're in it for the long haul. I mean, the company as a whole has been profitable for, we've been profitable for 8 straight years, so we're very profitable, and so there's no pressure for us to turn profitable in the UK anytime soon. So we're more than happy to continue to invest in this marketplace, and we don't have the pressures of having to be profitable here in the UK because we've got our US operation to fund the expansion here in the UK. So we'll get there.
And I guess, is it going to go the same way as TripAdvisor? Are you hoping to sell this and move on to a new project?
No. We'll most likely be a public company sometime in the near future. no plans to
No
sell
plans.
the company anytime soon.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. Thank you for joining us today. If you've got any comments you want to send over, please get in touch. We'd love to hear what you think, or if you've got any other questions for Langley, send them over and we'll put you in touch. Thank you
Great.
so much for
Yeah.
joining us. It's
Yeah.
really interesting to hear about what you guys are up to and what your plans are for the
Hopefully
future.
we can help all your dealers sell cars.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Good. All
Thank
right.
you.